Was the beloved Mr. Rogers truly the gentle soul we all admired? Or is there more to his story than meets the eye? For decades, he made generations feel seen, heard, and safe. But behind that soft-spoken tone, even Fred Rogers had a side that the cameras never captured. It's about the things that matter to me, which I think are more important, because it allows you to think about what's just been said. Before his death, Rogers' widow revealed an awful truth. What she shared isn't just unexpected, it's deeply personal. The truth might change the way you remember America's favorite neighbor forever. What if the most powerful children's show in television history didn't rely on flashy graphics or loud characters, but on the raw strength of one man speaking directly to your soul? Let's take a walk through that iconic neighborhood and explore the quiet revolution Fred started with a little show that left a massive impact. Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, the show that forever redefined childhood. Fred Rogers never set out to be a TV star. What he wanted more than anything was to meet children where they were, right in the middle of their big emotions, small questions, and growing hearts. And he did it with a calm voice, thoughtful eyes, and a neighborhood that changed lives. When Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood first aired on PBS in 1968, it didn't come with flashy lights, zany characters, or fast-paced storylines. It was calm, almost disarmingly so. Fred Rogers would enter through the door, hang up his coat, slip into that iconic cardigan, change his shoes for sneakers, and start singing, "Won't You Be My Neighbor?" It felt less like a TV show and more like a visit with an old friend. But that was the point. Fred designed the show as an emotional classroom. While other programs focused on numbers and the alphabet, Fred helped kids navigate their feelings, fear, anger, sadness, joy, giving them the language to understand what was going on inside them. The show tackled serious topics like divorce, death, race, and disability, without ever talking down to its young audience. It was slow television, yes, but deeply intentional. The episodes even ventured into the whimsical neighborhood of make-believe, where puppets like King Friday the 13th, Daniel Tiger, and Lady Elaine Fairchild acted out mini-dramas that mirrored real-life struggles. Fred voiced several key puppets himself, each one reflecting a different side of his personality. Over the span of 31 seasons, from 1968 to 2001, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood aired 895 episodes. That's not only impressive, it's unheard of for a show with such a niche mission. But its staying power wasn't rooted in flashy distractions. It was about heart. Fred knew that kids didn't need more noise. They needed stillness. They needed honesty. And, most importantly, they needed someone who didn't treat their problems as just kid stuff. Each episode became a time capsule of comfort. No laugh tracks, no loud sound effects, no commercial breaks. Just Fred, speaking directly to the camera, as if he was speaking directly to you. For many viewers, especially those from chaotic homes or who felt out of place, those 30 minutes with Mr. Rogers became the safest part of their day. While the show's tone was subtle, the guest list sometimes made a bit of noise. Fred invited people from all walks of life, artists, musicians, scientists, and even animals, to sit down, teach, or simply be present. People like Yo-Yo Ma, who showed children how music could express feelings words couldn't. Julia Child, who brought her love of cooking and charm into Fred's kitchen. LeVar Burton, fellow literacy advocate from Reading Rainbow. David Copperfield, who added a touch of magic to the neighborhood. Tony Bennett, offering his smooth vocals and warmth. And even Coco the gorilla, who communicated with Fred using sign language. That unforgettable moment of connection left viewers in awe. Every guest, whether famous or not, was treated with the same dignity and respect Fred extended to his audience. That was the magic. Everyone mattered, and the television industry took note. Over the years, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood earned countless accolades, including 4 Daytime Emmy Awards for excellence in children's programming and 55 Emmy nominations, a testament to how consistent and impactful the show remained. The show also received the Cine Golden Eagle Award for outstanding educational content, like the episode Let's Talk About Going to the Doctor. In 1997, Fred was honored with a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Daytime Emmys. During his acceptance speech, he famously asked the crowd to take 10 seconds of silence to think about the people who helped them become who they are. The entire room went still. But for Fred, the true reward was not in the trophies. It was in knowing that children everywhere felt loved, understood, and valued. Even after the show ended in 2001, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood lived on in the hearts of viewers. Thanks to streaming platforms and YouTube, new generations of kids continue to discover his calm voice, his gentle wisdom, and his cardigan-clad presence. And shows like Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, produced by Fred Rogers Productions, carry on his mission with new stories and new characters, built on the same foundation of emotional honesty and kindness. Fred once said, "The greatest gift you ever give is your honest self." And that's exactly what he gave for over 3 decades. In Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, that truth never goes out of style. To truly understand Fred Rogers, you need to meet the woman who stood beside him through it all. Their story is full of surprising twists. Who was Joanne Rogers? Before the name Mrs. Fred Rogers made headlines, Joanne Bird was writing her own extraordinary story, and it's anything but ordinary. Born in 1928 in Jacksonville, Florida, Joanne Rogers grew up in a home where curiosity, music, and meaningful conversation were the pillars of everyday life. Her parents weren't flashy or wealthy, but they were thoughtful, determined, and instilled in her the importance of kindness and intellectual curiosity. Her father was a traveling salesman, and her mother was a stay-at-home mom who created a home filled with love, structure, and a sense of purpose. From a young age, Joanne learned the value of speaking up when it mattered, and, perhaps more importantly, of listening even more intently. Music quickly became more than just a hobby for Joanne. It became her language, her way of expressing herself to the world. By the time she hit grade school, Joanne was already making waves as a piano prodigy. But unlike many young musicians, she didn't play to impress, she played because it made her feel alive. Classical music, jazz, folk tunes, she explored them all. And when she landed a spot at Rollins College in Winter Park, Florida, it was clear she wasn't just following a passion, she was carving a path for herself. At Rollins, Joanne majored in music performance, and it didn't take long for her to stand out, not only for her technical skill but for the soul she infused into every piece. Her professors took notice, and her classmates felt it. Whether performing solo or accompanying others, Joanne had an uncanny ability to connect with the music and her audience, making the notes feel as though they spoke more than words ever could. But Joanne wasn't the kind of person who sought out the spotlight. Fame was never her goal. What she valued more were deep friendships, honest conversations, and a true sense of community. She had the kind of laughter that could light up any room, but she also knew when to lean in and ask the kinds of questions that made you pause and think. After college, Joanne continued her studies at Florida State University before eventually heading to Pittsburgh to study at Carnegie Tech, now Carnegie Mellon. There, she sharpened her musical skills and stretched her creativity. But this chapter wasn't just about music, it was about Joanne discovering who she wanted to be in the world. She also became a teacher. In the 1950s, she taught at Chatham College's Preparatory School of Music, sharing her passion with young students. Later, in the 1970s, she taught at Carlow College. In addition to teaching, Joanne was an accomplished concert pianist. She performed as part of a piano duo with her longtime friend Janine Morrison, and together, they recorded 2 albums, Duo Piano Favorites and a Virtuoso Duo Piano Showcase. But even then, Joanne wasn't the type to fit into a mold. She wasn't aiming to become someone's wife or sidekick, she had a vision for her life, one that was defined by music, independence, and the freedom to express herself. Whether in front of a piano or over coffee with a friend, Joanne was known for her heart, wit, and unshakable sense of calm. Joanne's contributions to the arts were eventually recognized. In 2019, she was awarded an honorary degree from Duquesne University for her lifelong dedication to music and education. But when her path crossed with Fred Rogers, someone who shared that same depth of character and creativity, it wasn't a coincidence. It was fate. The love story behind the legend. It's easy to look at a decades-long marriage and only see the surface, the photos in matching outfits, the shared home, the public smiles. But with Fred and Joanne Rogers, the real story lies beneath that surface. Their love didn't shout, it whispered. It began in the quiet corners of a college music hall in Florida. Fred and Joanne first crossed paths at Rollins College in the late 1940s. Both music majors, both dedicated to their craft, and both unknowingly about to become the most important person in each other's lives. Joanne wasn't the type to be dazzled easily. She had grown up with music in her veins and a sharp mind that cut through pretenses. What caught her attention wasn't Fred's charm or his potential. It was the way he listened, really listened, and the way he treated people with a softness that was rare, even back then. Their connection grew in practice rooms, piano labs, and over shared recitals. But Fred and Joanne's bond wasn't built on candlelight or grand gestures. They weren't the kind of couple who thrived on dramatic moments. Instead, they built something far sturdier, a partnership rooted in shared rhythm, intellectual connection, and emotional safety. They spoke the same musical language, yes, but more importantly, they heard each other in a way few others could. After college, life didn't exactly roll out a red carpet for their relationship. Fred left for New York to start a job with NBC, while Joanne stayed behind in Florida. Long-distance relationships were tough in the 1940s and 50s. There were no texts, no FaceTime calls, just pen, paper, and patience. Yet, despite the distance, their letters never stopped. Each envelope wasn't just filled with updates, it was packed with unspoken care, longing, and a growing sense of trust. Then came the letter, the proposal. Tucked between updates and affection was the question that would change both their lives. Joanne was so overwhelmed that she rushed to a nearby phone booth to say yes, nearly losing the letter on the way. She kept it safe from that moment on, knowing that this small piece of paper marked the beginning of something unshakable. They married in 1952, and their union turned into more than 50 years of marriage. But theirs wasn't the kind of relationship that looked perfect on a mantelpiece. It was messy, funny, real. Music remained central to their bond. The two of them would often play piano duets, delighting in the harmony as much as in the occasional mistakes. They had their own inside jokes, their own shorthand. And when Fred's work became demanding, or the outside world felt too loud, Joanne was his quiet place. They had two sons, James and John. Life at home was structured but warm. Joanne wasn't just the mother of Fred Rogers' children, she was the emotional backbone of the family. She protected his space, made room for his process, and also challenged him when needed. She understood his silence, his routine, the layers that few others ever saw. And perhaps most importantly, she never tried to change him. People often assume Fred Rogers was simple, kind, yes, but uncomplicated. But those who knew him well, Joanne especially, understood that he was layered. He carried the weight of others' pain, worried deeply about doing enough, about being enough. Joanne was the one person who truly understood that. She held his complexities without fear, and gave him permission to be both tender and flawed. Even as Fred became a beloved public figure, their marriage remained grounded. They didn't live for applause or attention. They lived for mornings filled with music, laughter during mundane moments, and the kind of companionship that comes from being fully known, and still loved. What they shared wasn't a fairy tale. And that's what made it beautiful. Behind the legend was a love story built on effort, respect, and an unshakable bond. While the world saw Mr. Rogers as the gentle icon in a cardigan, Joanne saw the man behind the camera. She knew his worries, his fears, and his discipline. She saw him at his most real, and she kept those parts sacred. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real magic in their story. Not that it was perfect, but that it was real, and they chose it, over and over, for more than 5 decades. Rogers is often remembered as an icon of kindness and gentleness, someone who was calm, patient, and a steady voice for children's emotional health. His persona, wrapped in soft cardigans, soothing tones, and carefully chosen words, became a pillar of comfort and reliability. However, what Joanne Rogers' reflections reveal is that the person behind that gentle smile was, in fact, a man who faced the same human struggles as anyone else. Joanne's decision to speak candidly about Fred's vulnerabilities, especially toward the end of his life, adds a much-needed layer of authenticity to his legacy. She doesn't just focus on the public image of Fred that we've all come to love. She shares the quieter, more personal side that most of us never saw. Her openness about the emotional and physical toll Fred's battle with stomach cancer took on him, and on their marriage, reminds us that even someone as seemingly perfect as Fred Rogers was not immune to doubt, fear, and struggle. He was a man who chose to live with patience and kindness, but that was a choice he had to make every day, not an effortless trait that came naturally. What stands out most in this narrative is the image of Fred as someone who, despite his public persona of unwavering calm, wrestled with pressure, self-doubt, and the emotional weight of being a public figure. For decades, millions of children looked up to him as a beacon of emotional wisdom and gentleness. The world saw a man who seemed invulnerable in his kindness. But behind the scenes, Fred wrestled with his own fears that he might not live up to the expectations placed on him, and fears of the emotional toll his role in the public eye was taking on him and his family. This makes the public Mr. Rogers even more remarkable, because we now know that his kindness wasn't born from an unshakable inner peace, but from conscious, daily effort. Joanne's revelation that Fred wasn't a saint, but simply a deeply human person who worked at his kindness is such an honest and valuable truth. It shatters the fantasy of the perfect public figure, reminding us that true goodness, while it can appear effortless, often takes deliberate action, especially when it comes to emotions. Fred's choice to live a life of empathy and warmth wasn't automatic. It was a choice made over and over again. It also touches on a more intimate side of their relationship, how Fred's public role often left Joanne to be the strong, practical, and sometimes disciplinarian force in their home. She reflects on how Fred struggled with discipline when it came to their sons, and she stepped into that role to balance things out. It's so human. No relationship is perfectly balanced, and while Fred was the embodiment of gentleness, Joanne's role was essential in making sure their family functioned with structure and love. It's a reminder that relationships, especially long ones, have many layers, and that those layers include moments of tension and growth. There's an inherent beauty in this honesty because it shows that love is not always easy or without struggle. It's a commitment that requires continual work. The idea that Fred Rogers carried a private weight, especially in his later years, makes his public persona even more impactful. Joanne's reflections give us a glimpse into the emotional and spiritual depth that was hidden from public view. As he faced the final stage of his life with cancer, Joanne became his caregiver, a role that she took on without hesitation but with immense emotional cost. She describes Fred's bravery during this time and the moments of tenderness and humor that allowed him to face his illness with a sense of grace. The idea that Fred kept playing the piano, finding solace in music even when his body was failing him, is deeply moving. Music, which had been such a constant in his life and their marriage, became a small but meaningful way to stay connected to the things he loved most. And perhaps what's most striking about Joanne's decision to share these intimate moments is the way it challenges the public's perception of Fred as an infallible figure. By showing us Fred's private struggles, Joanne doesn't tear down the legacy of kindness Fred worked so hard to build. Instead, she makes that kindness all the more meaningful by showing that it was not born from perfection, but from a man who was deeply aware of his flaws and challenges, and who chose to face them with grace. It's a powerful testament to Fred's humanity, and Joanne's courage in sharing these details makes it possible for us to understand the true depth of Fred's life and work. Joanne's role in continuing Fred's legacy after his death is just as remarkable. Instead of retreating from the public eye, she became a steady and active force in preserving the mission Fred started with his shows. She didn't simply protect his legacy from the shadows, she took it upon herself to ensure it stayed relevant and impactful for future generations. Her leadership at Fred Rogers Productions helped ensure that Fred's message of kindness and emotional understanding continued to be a guiding light for children. The idea that May 23rd was made 143 Day by the state of Pennsylvania, because it's the 143rd day of the year, symbolizing, I love you, is such a beautiful tribute to Fred's life and the way he wove meaning into even the smallest aspects of his existence. Joanne herself didn't shy away from sharing her own love for music, and like Fred, her art became a vehicle for spreading warmth and kindness. Whether it was through her work with Fred Rogers Productions or her own performances, Joanne reminded the world that the legacy of love and creativity that Fred championed was something she, too, embodied. After Fred's passing, Joanne continued to step into the spotlight, whether it was through documentaries, interviews, or even her cameo in A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. She was not just the widow of Fred Rogers, she was his equal partner in keeping his message alive. And in doing so, she gave us all the opportunity to see a more complete picture of who Fred Rogers was, not just the icon, but the real, flawed, deeply kind person who chose love every single day. Finally, Fred's number, 143, becomes more than a number in Joanne's telling of their story. It's the heartbeat of their shared life, a quiet, enduring symbol of the love they lived. And even after Fred's passing, Joanne ensured that this symbol would continue to live on, in both the legacy of Fred's work and the way she continues to embody that kindness in her own life. Her decision to step into the spotlight after his death, rather than retreat, speaks volumes about the kind of person she is, someone who values love and truth and is determined to share both with the world. Joanne Rogers didn't just preserve Fred's memory, she elevated it. Through her, Fred's legacy endures, not as a perfect, untouchable myth, but as a real, human story of kindness, effort, and the power of love. It's a reminder that the most profound legacies aren't the ones built on perfection, but on genuine, deliberate choices to be kind, even when it's hard. So, to answer the question, what do you think of Joanne's decision to share these intimate parts of Fred's life? It adds a new layer of depth to Fred's legacy. It humanizes him in a way that doesn't diminish his goodness, but enhances it. It's a reminder that kindness, while powerful, is also something that requires effort, vulnerability, and honesty, qualities Fred Rogers, in his quiet way, taught us all to embrace.